So, can have everyone's attention. So last winter, as you may recall, we had a polar vortex, and it was on the news every day. Polar vortex, it's really cold. All this Arctic air was coming down from Canada, and it was particularly strong in the Midwest, where I live, from Iowa, and I totally loved it. I was out just about every day after work, cross-country skiing in the woods with my trusty iPod, listening to things. Sometimes it would be 10 below zero. My wife said, "You could die out there." And I said, "I love it. I woke up with sweat. I won't get cold." So I was out there a lot, and I had a chance to listen to a lot of things that I hadn't had a chance to listen to. And I had a bunch of files on my computer that some fellow in Seattle had sent me, and I thought, oh, I'll see what this Kristin Kirk character is all about, and had the files for quite a while. And so I was skiing along, and I was starting to listen, and I very quickly became utterly captivated and charmed by Kristin's whole manner of being and manner of speaking. You know, there's an emphasis on speaking from experience, and often the connotation of that is that, you know, we have experienced stuff, and we're speaking on the basis of what we have experienced. But I got the sense with Kristin that as she was speaking, she was, you know, moment to moment, speaking from the experience she was having at that moment. And if she was presented with a question or something to which she didn't have an immediate answer, she would go silent for a moment and check in, and an answer would come. And I was always kind of delighted by how right on the answers seemed, because during that moment of silence I would be thinking, well, how's she going to answer this? And then she would come out with something, and I'd say, that's perfect. So I invited Kristin for an interview, and we had this great conversation for about 3 hours, and went on. And then after we finished, I checked it, and I discovered that one side of the audio, I forget whether it was mine or hers, hadn't recorded at all. So I got back in touch with her, and I said, Kristin, we've got a problem. You want to do it again? And she said, sure. Didn't bat an eye, I wasn't upset that we had just spent 3 hours. And so the next day we had another one for at least 2 hours, and put it up on the web, and it proved to be very, very popular. And Kristin kind of took off in terms of all kinds of people being interested in what she had to do and say. And to date, it's, you know, well over 12,000 people have watched that interview, and then listened to the audio. In any case, I was really delighted to have found Kristin. She's become one of my dear friends, and I'm really happy to have invited her to stand and to be introducing her now to speak to you.
Thank you. It's very, very sweet. Okay, so maybe I do need audio.
So let's just sit for just a moment. Thank you so much for coming. an absolute pleasure to be here. And, thank you, Rick, very much. It's so beautiful being here. I've never been to an event like this, and I haven't had any particular teachers or path or practice. So all that has come forward for me has just come forward on its own, and it's so beautiful to hear the language that all these different people are choosing to speak to the same truth that I want to share also. So I went to a meditation this morning with Rupert, and he was speaking about the meditation was an experiential meditation, and it was about what I wanted to speak about today. So it's just really satisfying. It's just beautiful. So if I just kind of jump in, what I wanted to offer was support and potential different pathways for people to be with their own conditioned material in the presence of its dissolving. So if I were just to use a metaphor of the sun is always shining and there are clouds, and if the clouds are the conditioned self, in awakeness, awareness is resting as the sun and can see the clouds, and the clouds don't tend to really bug you. And if you're on the other side of the clouds, they're blocking the light of your being, and they may bug you a lot. So what I wanted to do was just kind of offer a potentially useful framework for how I experience this, to give people a pathway or a potential process for being present with this in yourself. I'm not a scientist, physicist at all, and it's been amazing to me how much of my experience in awakening feels like science and feels like math and physics. So when I use, I'm going to talk about wave particle. So I'm not a scientist, but this is what my experience has just revealed. So that's why I choose the language that I choose. And if I say something that doesn't make sense, because I've kind of made up my own language for all this, because I haven't studied in a particular way, just raise your hand and ask me what I mean. One of the shifts for me in that shift from the individual sense of self to recognizing a totality is there's a quality of feeling separate, and that's when I use this word particle, of feeling like a particle, and that in truth we're both, and that separate sense of self releases and lets go or softens into the wave consciousness. And in the same way that a C note can be present in a room in the midst of all sorts of different notes, that it retains its individual C note, it's also a wave, and all the waves can be together and not forget themselves but make harmonies. So I experience each of our individual nature the same way. I saw somewhere someone use the word signature essence or something like that, which I loved. It's like, that's what I'm talking about, is our uniqueness is like an individual beautiful song. It's a resonance, and that our conditioning comes from having had a sense of separation from the whole and then identifying with experiences that we've had. And that identification creates a substance that is visible when your eyes become sensitive enough to see it. And the dissolving, so this talk is about supporting the dissolving of that substance that's been created through the identification, to bring your attention back to your individual resonance, your individual song. And in opening up to that, then opening up to the divine symphony of the universe, that always is, and that we're not separate from. So this wave particle physics thing, that came to me was seeing that the sense of self is necessary. The sense of self is necessary for individual experience to happen. So it's not something that you need to get away from or destroy. That there's an innate natural experience of that individual experience, and in the wave, it's not logical, it's not linear, the mind can't quite get it, but in that softening and opening up from that kind of particle existence, you open up to the wave and you get to be that which you are, this individual song that is just one sound of the universe singing. So there's an instinctual piece to this individual sense of self. And that instinctual piece also needs to be surrendered. And that is often like the sticking point for people. And so in terms of experiences where we identify, there's usually a sense of some life-threatening kind of experience, and so instinct kicks in to try and preserve the individual. So in terms of our physical life, it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to be hanging around with crocodiles and during lunchtime. It's not, so that it serves, but it also needs to be surrendered through. So the whole, if we look at the body, just pause for a minute. So this individual, this instinctual nature is one of the hardest things to surrender through, because it has this quality of life or death, and it's a function of consciousness to keep your system alive. So to surrender through that is counter-instinctual. And what I have found through the process that I want to kind of offer today is that by practicing surrendering through the easier things, of whatever attachments might happen, of, oh, someone ate the last piece of chocolate cake, and it's like, okay, that might be easier to surrender through, than, all sorts of things that we can think of that might grab us. But the more, for myself, the more that I was with all these layers that started to come forward, there was a way my system got used to, oh, surrender that, oh, surrender that, oh, surrender that, ooh, I get it, surrender that. And that as that process continued, the more challenging things came up. And then I got more comfortable in the process of consciously being with the surrendering of those. And that I've found that process hasn't stopped, and that there's the conditioning that we have identified with through our lifetimes of experience. And then there's these deeper structures of consciousness that have just been revealing themselves to me that then also need to be surrendered through. So the will is then just a divine function. The sense of seeking is a divine function. The sense of being directed from one place to another is a divine function. The feeling of purpose is a divine function. So everything is a divine function. And the surrendering of identification can be taken from the chocolate cake through to these core functions of who we think we are and what moves us and directs us. And then I also say it hasn't stopped for me. So So I'm constantly kind of amazed and surprised, like, oh, cool, that too, and then opening and dissolving through. And these layers and layers just keep revealing themselves. So I'm just gonna, I know our time is short, I have so much to share, but I want to just kind of streamline here. So this wave particle thing, I think it may be easy or easier to get a sense of what I'm speaking about if we talk about emotions. And that if you, let's just say grief, that grief is grief. It's a frequency. It's the same frequency as it is here, everywhere else, right? That it's the same frequency. And so we recognize it in others because it's the same thing we feel. But when it's our grief, there's a way we hold it as if it's ours. So if you can notice the difference between grief that has no beginning and end, it's just a resonance, it's just a frequency, and then when you hold it, it somehow then comes into form, has a sense of a container around it, it's been identified. So if you can play with just noticing the edge between when you hold it as yours and noticing the frequency of grief. It's that function, divine function of an individual experience and just divine expression. And so I just want to invite you, now or later, to play with that edge. Because that's all I'm talking about. And so the sense of yourself as an individual versus being divine, it's that same function that suddenly pulls itself into a sense of containment. So if I were to say there's any illusion, it's just the believing that, as opposed to recognizing it's a divine gift to have that. Then you get to love grief and grow through grief and surrender through grief and evolve through grief and release grief. Everything that is created is divine gift. And if we embrace our conditioning in this way, each conditioned nugget it's a present. It is it's a divine present. And if we come to it with love and this recognition of this wave particle quality, we can then receive all the wisdom that wants to come from that experience. I'm a big proponent of embodiment, and that I experience the body as consciousness manifesting. It's consciousness itself. It's not like a vehicle that we kind of ride or hang out in until we get out of here. It's not. Was it Igor was speaking the other day in the panel about everything being sound, and I loved that because I wouldn't use that because I'm not, my hearing isn't. I'm more hooked up into the seeing and the energy, so I experience everything as frequency, which is sound, but frequency that then condenses into a form that then looks physical. And so when identification happens, you can often find a physical location for that story being loved and held as a gift until you're ready to unwrap it. So in my own process of being with the releasing of these layers, I would feel for me, I was seeing, different lifetime experience. I was seeing the story and then feeling the emotional content and then feeling the landing spot in the body. So I would often put my hand to wherever that spot was and allow attention to surrender deeply into that spot and be with whatever came up, knowing that the thoughts were from the past. The experience was something that wasn't happening in this moment. I was lying in my bed or sitting on a cushion, and so there are ways that I could be present with that particle holding of my pain, my trauma, my death, my, whatever, and be open with it and spacious with it, with that wave nature. And just by being present in that openness with the containment, it would start to soften, and it would depend on each situation what helped release the weaving first, whether the release of the thought would start to untangle the emotional component and the physical component, or sometimes it was the emotional piece and sometimes it was the physical piece. And one of the things that was amazing to me is how much can actually resolve by bringing attention to the physical piece, to feel the quality, the sensation, the location, the size, the substance, the density. Because if I recognize that agony of betrayal actually had a shape and a size and a form to it, I was just that closer to not being lost in it. So our bodies are God, right? Where it's like nothing is separate. So it's like we're this living divine package. And so this unfolding can be unfolded through meditation and opening up through infinite, transcendent, just empty truth, and can be found through opening through love, resonance of being present with the psychological unfolding, and can be found through surrendering into the depth of the substance of the being. So there's no separation. There's nowhere to go. You don't have to go anywhere. It's like, you just for a second indulge me and put your hands on your body and, just like this is truth. This, right, this, right, yeah, right. And it's through this depth of loving that the places that are hurting or that have been identified from a previous hurt, it's through this loving that those places feel safe to come out. They're not afraid they're going to be beaten or betrayed or killed yet again. And so the rawness of the conditioning, the more my experiences, the more that we release, or this conditioning releases, the more intense the conditioning is that comes forward. And it's all the same. It's just, in terms of physics, it's just more contracted. The survival need or the level of pain was so intense that it just got more contracted. So we tend to, it's our nature, right? It's like you put your hand in fire, you pull your hand away. That's what you're supposed to do. But the challenge is we've done that with our emotional reality. So something hurts and we go and hide from it, as opposed to opening our heart further and saying, oh, that hurt. What are you saying? What, you know? And so it's this, for me, there's been this fierce willingness to be present with everything. If everything is God, then everything is God. And I don't need to hide from anything. And my internal process has been this fierceness of being willing to both experience anything and be anything. Another part that can be hard for people is opening to the dark places and being willing to see what's been co-created and the place of self that is identified with hatred and control and manipulation and all these things that don't feel good, you know. And in that fierceness, that fierce willingness to be with everything and letting it surrender in the face of love, surrender into the physics of its creation, that the darkness is just so contracted. That's all. So if you can surrender the thought of I'm bad, or I'm evil, or shame, or judgment, if you can surrender the thought, and then be with the emotional content, and be with the physical nature, everything dissolves back to that which it came from, because that's just the nature of existence. And if we're willing to really see and really feel and be fully present with everything, everything dissolves back home. So I guess, you know, it's like what I want to just bring home is like everything you need is sitting in your chair. Right? Like this is a divine, you are a divine present unfolding. And it's just being present with the truth in a fierce willingness and love. And that this quality of physics can really help support and make it easier to not get caught in the thoughts or the emotions of the weave of this reality. The weaving comes from the thought and the emotion and the physicality, and they get woven together, and then we believe we're in this reality and like stuck here. And it's just not what's true. So I had a little fingers up a moment ago, so I think I'd like to leave space for questions if there are any questions. We have like 10 minutes. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm T.
T?
As you're talking, I'm feeling the sense of your process. And I've heard so many teachers over the years. Unlike you, I've been to so many teachers, I've seen so many processes, but I've seen very few that are so similar to mine as yours. And I want to kind of get up and jump up on top of my chair and cheer for you. I'm so fucking happy for you. I'm so happy. And I mean, what you're speaking is so incredibly important, because you can go to like far off, distant, vast, amazing, black, deep space. But if you're not right here in your life, in being the bad guy for people, or in being the, or in being the deficient one, or in being the one that doesn't feel like they have the resources, or all those different places in ourselves, it's like we're missing something. We're not attending to the whole thing. Right? So I'm like rock on. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to say one other thing that's you're just reminding me of is, when I say our bodies are divine consciousness manifesting, all of the functions that are happening are not limited to physical functioning. I haven't studied breathing meditation at all, but I'm aware of the breath being the movement of the universe, this expanding and contracting, and it's like, I don't know what words to use. The words just are not going to work great. But like awareness expanding out to the farthest point and then coming back to source, and expanding out to the farthest point and coming back to source. And your digestion doesn't just digest food. We talk about reading and, I'm digesting that book, right? Like digestion is digesting all your experience from all points in time, all references. Your heart is in a rhythmic expression of love and circulating that through your system and circulating that through the universe. Like every aspect of your physical expression is a divine, cosmic happening now. So yes, I'm talking about the being present with being a jerk or being the sweetheart or being the divine expression that's happening. But again, there's no separation. And so this is where the universe happening.
This is precisely it.
Yeah. Okay. One more question? Yeah.
When you talk about the dissolving, if the experience is only physical, is there a lack of connection? I mean, like a persistent physical pattern that seems to be just a physical pattern. In order for that to dissolve, does one need to find the emotional belief or experience?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question, but our time is tight, so I'm just going to jump in and see if I get it.
Yeah.
So in my experience, there are different dimensions in the expression of what we are, and that they feel different. So the mind, thoughts feel different than emotions. The empty, infinite mind feels different than the resonant heart, which feels different from your flesh. And that is the weaving of all of these together that create the substance of the conditioning. So, and you can feel that energetically, you can feel it physically, you can feel it in these different dimensions. So in your own unraveling, unfolding, attention may be drawn to one reference point or another reference point, to be present and surrendering through and loving with whichever reference point comes up in whichever order. My experience has been, and it's just been gift after gift. Like if you think of it that way as a present, it just keeps giving. It just keeps unfolding.
So just stay wherever consciousness goes.
Yeah, because we're not controlling any of it anyway. It's not that way, it's just surrendering into the stillness and the truth, and with that openness, you're giving yourself the space for consciousness to do what it just wants to do anyway. Yeah. So,
You have time for another.
hmm?
You have time for another one.
No, 3 minutes.
So we, I've got my support person here telling me about I should say things. So I should say things, that if you want to be on an email list, you can sign up here. I'm open to doing a group healing today, which I could do either directly after this or during lunch, and would ask for donations for that, because it requires a lot of me to open and hold space for that. So if there's a show of hands, if anyone wants to do that.
You want to explain a bit what it is?
Yeah, what is the group healing you're
Group
doing?
healing. How many minutes do we have? Okay, so group healing. So much of what I've been doing is doing healing work. When I'm doing a group healing, there are all these guides and devas and deities that all come in. In my awakening, I've just seen all these veils kind of fell away, so I'm seeing all these dimensions. I see all this stuff in a very clear way. So these beings come, an energetic container is created, and the substance of people's conditioning is then witnessed with really clear, precise eyes and hearts from these beings. And within the container, there's a supporting you at your evolutionary edge of unfolding to support the resolving of the conditioning in you that's wanting to resolve. It's like evolution sort of like sped up a little bit.
But do you do like Reiki, something like Reiki? Do you pass energy to them, or how do you heal them?
So it's like my consciousness is open through all these different dimensions at the same time, and so even though your consciousness might not be aware of yourself at all those different dimensions, we get to communicate on all those different dimensions together at the place where your consciousness and mind communicate, even though you might not be aware. And because of the awareness in all these dimensions, physics is different in each of the dimensions. And so the rules are different. So just by opening up through all those layers, your system will have access to certain functions of clearing itself that it wouldn't necessarily have on your own.
Explain where it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Oh, I want to see if, because I'll only do it if people are interested. It doesn't matter to
how
me.
many people need?
Go
1
ahead.
to 2.
1 to 2.
1 to 2.
Okay, you have some other things to announce?
Great. And I also have 2 retreats coming up in Kauai if you want to spend more time together in like an outreach or something.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now.